everybody, welcome back to CNS Corvettes in Sarasota, Florida. This is your buddy Lyle, here to talk to you about more interesting Corvette stuff. Before we get started, please make sure to like, subscribe, notify, bell, send me money, whatever you want to do, but please do it now. It helps me out, lets me continue to help you. Today we're going to talk about bad gas. And I'm not talking about the kind you get after you leave Golden Corral. I'm talking about what happens to the gasoline in your car as your car sits. Now, a lot of people up north are bringing their cars out of storage that have been there for 5-6 months. Most of the people doing that have been doing it for years, and they know the steps to take to keep their gas from going bad during the time that that car is idle. But I wanted to talk to you today and educate you a little bit about some of the things about gasoline that you may not know. Gasoline, back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s, gasoline lasted like a year before it went bad. You know, you could fill up your little lawnmower gas can and mow for a year, and then you could put your lawnmower away and dump it in your snowblower and blow snow for the rest of the year, all for that same little 5-gallon can. That's not the way gas is anymore. Due to changes in, well, many of the changes to gasoline, most importantly the addition of ethanol starting in 2005 that was mandated by the government, gasoline today loses combustibility after about 3 to 6 months from the date of production. Now, you're thinking to yourself, I never let my car sit for 3 to 6 months. Right, most people don't. However, you have to take into account that that gas was produced somewhere else and stored in a large tank at some place, and then moved to a tanker ship, and then stored offshore for a while, and then brought into port, pumped out, put into another tank before it was put into a truck and brought to your local gas station. It's entirely possible that the gas you're pumping out of your gas station today was made a month ago or more. So you have to take that into account. More importantly, as I said, the ethanol in the fuel really exacerbates the short life of gasoline because ethanol loses its combustibility in 1 to 3 months due to oxidation and evaporation. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute. So, when fuel gets old, the chemical properties of the fuel change. Your engine can't process what it changes into effectively or correctly. Easiest way to tell if your gas is bad, and this is really old school, look at the color and take a whiff. If it is dark and looks like whiskey or Coke, and if it stinks to high hell, the gas is bad. And it is turning into what we call varnish. And it will turn into a much gummier, syrupy substance than it was when it started out. And that is going to lead to all kinds of problems in your fuel system. Specifically ethanol, back to that. Ethanol is what we call hygroscopic, meaning that it attracts and holds moisture. This forms water globules in the fuel that look like tapioca. If you ever had tapioca pudding, they're little like soft, squishy boogers. And they're floating all through your gas when your gas goes bad. And they cause corrosion on any of the metal parts of your fuel system. Your rheostat in your tank sending unit that tells your fuel gauge, how much fuel you have, any of your metal fuel lines, your fuel pump, any of that begins to rust when those come in contact with it. Also, those globules can stop up many of the smaller passages or smaller tubes in your fuel system completely, which means your engine will starve and it won't run. This is obviously not a good thing. Also, bad gas, if it makes it all the way to your engine, can seriously damage your engine and some of the components inside of it, which is a bad thing. Now, I've heard this before. Stop me if you've heard this one. Somebody has 2 gallons of gas in a car that they've let sit for a while, and they take the fuel cap off, take a sniff, and oof, it's horrible. They can tell it's bad. So their solution is to go take the car or bring fuel to the car and add 14 gallons of 93 octane Shell with Techron. Here's the thing. You started with 2 gallons of bad gas. You've added 14 gallons of good gas. What does that give you? Contrary to popular belief, it gives you 16 gallons of bad gas. Adding good fuel to bad fuel does not make the bad fuel good fuel. In fact, it makes the good fuel bad fuel. So if you have bad gas in your tank, adding fuel to it isn't going to solve your problem. If you find you have bad gas, it's time to drain the fuel out of that tank, clean that tank, and then refill it. You're also going to probably want to do a fuel filter, because if the bad gas was in the tank, odds are it was in your fuel lines and in your fuel filter as well, and we don't want that to go to your engine. There are a few tips that you can use to keep your fuel healthy as long as possible. Number one, and this goes for everything, you guys have heard me say it a million times, drive your car regularly. Don't let it sit for months at a time. Nothing's better for your car than driving it. Worst thing you can do for your car is to let it sit. And that's all systems, tires, suspension, AC, cooling, blah, blah, blah. Fuel, number one among them. Number two, if you're going to leave your car sit for a few weeks, fill up your tanks. Here's why. The more full your tank is, the less space there is for oxygen and moisture to occupy any space in there. The less oxygen and available moisture, the less moisture can be absorbed by the ethanol in the fuel, and the less problems you're going to have sooner. Fuel stabilizers like Stabil can help. They slow the degradation of the fuel for a limited time, but they are not I'm going to leave this car sit for 2 years, so I'm going to put Stabil in it and it'll be just fine. That's not the way that works. You're going to have bad fuel that then has Stabil in it too. My personal thing is, especially on older cars, if you have a classic car that you don't drive frequently, try to stay away from ethanol fuel at all. There's plenty of places, at least here in Florida, you can go on and Google and ask for ethanol-free fuel, and it'll direct you to gas stations that have what they call recreational fuel that doesn't have ethanol in it. You're going to pay more for it, but it will give you almost double the life of regular ethanol-infused gasoline. Cars that have sat for a year or more, and I just had a gentleman yesterday in my shop, had a 2004 commemorative edition convertible, beautiful car, thing is pristine, but 2 years ago he broke his leg horribly and has had multiple operations and is just now getting to the point where he can put weight on his leg and is doing physical therapy, so he wants to get back in and start driving his car. Thankfully he came to us and said, hey, my car's been sitting for 2 years without even being started. Is it okay to run it? And I'm like, no, it is not okay to run it. You're going to need to drain your fuel. You're going to need to do all of that, okay? The problem is, if the bad gas goes all the way through your fuel system, through your fuel filter, to your pressure regulator, up to your injectors, man, if the car's been sitting a year or more, there's a possibility you may need a fuel system overhaul. It's not all the time, but hopefully it doesn't, because that is not inexpensive. All of the things I've talked to you about today, I did source from JD Power. So this isn't just Lyle just grabbing facts out of his mind and spitting them forward. All of this stuff is documented and researched today. So everything I've told you is from the experts, people who know more about gasoline than I do. I hope you found this useful. If you have questions about it, let me know. And just for fun, if you want to comment today, send me your first name and what state or country you live in. I'd love to see what kind of reach I'm getting on these videos, and I think it'd be fun to see how far-flung our little messages get. So if you would do that for me, I'd very much appreciate it. Have a great day.